My name is Marilyn. I'm a targeted individual. I live in Kettering, Ohio. Let's see. It's January 21st, 2020, 11:01 a.m. I am a victim of a very sick and twisted organized stalking attack against myself and the community of Montgomery County. Many of the words I'm going to say are my own words, but unfortunately, my gang stalkers from the West Side of Dayton, Ohio, so you can get a sense of what that looks like. Please Google it. The West Side of Dayton, Ohio, Salem Avenue. They pick and choose my choices of words. They have been stalking my brain for about 2 years straight. It's a group of men from the West Side of Dayton. These are middle-aged adults who are using crack cocaine, powder cocaine. They're alcoholics, many of which are rapists and pedophiles. They're misogynists, unemployed, and they're being taken care of by a handler of a gang stalking group of people in Dayton, not Kettering. Now, these people that are from the West Side of Dayton are suffering from internalized racism. Now they're going to choke me. A sodomite that tortures me 24 hours a day. Excuse me, even when I sleep. He chokes me and forces me to vomit by commanding my brain to do so. Many of them often do this, and I end up vomiting in the morning. They've tried to do this to me at work, at home, even in my sleep. Okay, internalized racism as a phenomenon is a direct product of racial classification system and is found across different racial groups and regions around the world where race exists as a social construct. In these places, internalized racism can have adverse effects on those who experience it. For example, high internalized racism scores have been linked to poor health outcomes among Caribbean black women, higher propensity for violence among African American young males, and increased domestic violence among Native Americans. I'm not going to read this whole thing. This is Wikipedia. Another word for that is self-hatred. Okay? Now, when you're honest in a culture like this, it gets really, really, really hard. But one of our courageous people that are in the front of pop culture is Kanye West. And he has said this many ways. You can Google that and look at that. I'm not going to quote him. Again, they're commanding me to choke. Now, let's talk about the civil rights movement. I'm going to give two examples of that time frame. One that's legitimate, the second is not. The civil rights movement is legitimate. The civil rights movement was an organized effort by black Americans to end racial discrimination and gain equal rights under the law. It began in the late 1940s and ended in the late 1960s. Although tumultuous at times, the movement was mostly nonviolent and resulted in laws. Tumultuous is not the word, it was terroristic. We as black Americans were terrorized and murdered and slaughtered. Now, the Civil War had officially abolished slavery, but it didn't end discrimination against blacks. They continued to endure the devastating effects of racism, especially in the South. By the mid-20th century, African Americans had more than enough of prejudice and violence against them. They, along with many whites, mobilized and began to unprecedented fight for equality that spanned 2 decades. And many of us are familiar with these challenges, and so you can go look at that. I'm using history.com to get the vocabulary. Now, something in my opinion, and this is my opinion only, this is not the opinion of YouTube or Google or anyone who looks at my videos, okay? This is free speech. The Greensboro sit-ins, I do not believe that they are legitimate. And then I'll explain why. The Greensboro sit-ins were a series of nonviolent protests in Greensboro, North Carolina in 1960, which led to the Woolworth department store chain removing its policy of racial segregation in the southern United States. Okay. Now, these groups became the grassroots organizers of future sit-ins at lunch counters, wade-ins and segregated swimming pools, pray-ins, and white-only churches. By sitting in protest at an all-white lunch counter in Greensboro, North Carolina for college students sparked national interest in the push for civil rights. Now, before you say something that's negative against my opinions, and excuse me because I'm being tortured, my brain has about 30 people interacting with it. My brain swells. I have brain damage. My body's physically damaged by directed energy weapons. I'm a torture victim. I'm being tortured by two ethnic groups, white Americans and black Americans. Now, the Greensboro, North Carolina lunch counter conflict, I want to say this, and I hope that the perps will let me use my own language. White supremacy functions in a it's very sophisticated and it's global. You can use Dr. Neely Fuller as a reference. He has YouTube videos. He has a website, Dr. Neely Fuller, NEELYFULLER. Dr. Neely Fuller covers white supremacy probably at the best level. I'll just give you a little background on him, and I've used him as a reference to try to understand primarily my gang stalking. I was confused about my gang stalking, and let's try to find him online. His website is producejustice.com. I have both his books. I first read his book when I was a teenager. It kind of went over my head. And that book is the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. The Compensatory Counter-Racist Code by Neely Fuller Jr. And that's a revised book. The initial book, I believe, that was written in the 70s. The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. Anyway, you can go to these sites. The internet is a great place to get information. Now, white supremacy covers economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, war, and counter-war. That's everything. White men rule the world. We don't know who they are. Now, the gang stalkers are suffering from internalized racism. Okay? And they want to be gang stalkers with Kettering, which is a white supremacist group of gang stalkers. These are two different cities, Dayton and Kettering. What the Dayton black gang stalkers did, they used mind control. They took turns mind controlling the white supremacists of Kettering by making commands like, you want us, you need us, you want us. And every night I recorded it and I heard this nonsense. And there were different black male voices commanding them that they want them. Why would you want to go into a white supremacist gang stalking network unless you were a self-hating, internalized racism victim of the United States of America? The worst thing has happened. I'm the victim of both groups. This is why many TIs don't believe what I say. I'm a victim of two separate ethnic groups' hatred. It is, I can't believe I'm alive. Okay? Now, the whites of Kettering that are gang stalkers, this is the most racist community in Montgomery County. There's Centerville, which is an upper class white community. There's Moraine, right next to Kettering. Moraine and Kettering are very racist. Okay? There's the east side of Dayton, the west side of Dayton, and then other little small communities around us. The west side of Dayton doesn't have a grocery store. They ruined their own community. We used to have a mall. It was called the Salem Mall. And we meaning black people. They closed the mall down for obvious reasons. We don't have a large grocery store anymore. We have to go to Kettering to buy our food, our alcohol, most of our clothing, our things to be sanitary, our vehicles. We have to go to the Whites to buy everything, just about. There are businesses in Dayton West Side. There are black businesses across Montgomery County and even inside the white community. There are black businesses. I've worked for them. But they're using drugs. Bear with me. I hope you please listen to this whole thing. The black gang stalkers are of a lower class, lower education, lower standards of living, psychologically more damaged, less intelligent, okay? And they're trying to control one of the most powerful towns in Montgomery County using crack cocaine and cocaine. This is not going to happen. All they're doing now is beating me to death. Black people are beating me to death 24 hours a day because they cannot think critically. I might have to quote Kanye West. So the lunch counter, why are you going to go? The whites enslaved you. They kidnapped you from Africa. They genocide you in the Congo. They genocide you in South Africa. They steal your diamonds and gold. They molest your children and women and men. They rape and sodomize the black men on the plantation. They destroy and wage war against Africa and the Caribbean. They have assaulted people in South America, Mexico, and United States of America. You are being forced into all kinds of dangerous situations, and you're worried about whether you can eat their food. Why? Why, after they torture you, do you want to eat their food? Why would you even trust that they wouldn't mess with it? You have the ability to cook food and open up your own restaurant, open up your own shops, open up your own businesses, and feed each other. You don't need to be gang stalkers with Kettering. And you sure as hell don't need to eat their food. Get your act together and get your own stuff. Get a job. I got a job. So this self-hating, they hate sexism. I went to the Women's March in a small town. It was not that interesting. I wish I had gone to another state and planned it because I had the time off. But the feminist movement is basically controlled by white women. It's which means it's white supremacist in its nature. And that's fine because that's their battle against the white men. Unfortunately, I have learned so much about blackness from sharing my brain with other black people. I have never been terrorized so badly in my life. I am talking the type of... I was so terrorized that I left the country to escape black terrorist attacks against me. My companion and my mother. That I tried to relocate 3 different times. I've been in the hospital 4 or 5 times. I've broken my foot, busted knee, I've lost my hair, my rib. They have mock punching matches on my body when I sleep. These black men pretend to punch me. I wake up with bruised ribs internally. They're mind controlling me to believe I'm being punched and kicked and tortured. They mind control me to feel pain 24 hours a day for days on end while I'm gardening, planting tulips. They mind control me that I can't think. I have been abused by black men. Now imagine me being tortured to death by black men and saying, I need to go... Okay, I'm not even going to say that. Okay, so my point is that today, this morning, when I'm preparing my lunch to take with me to work, there's this fool named Daryl Washington. He's a diseased pedophile who sells drugs and he's smoking and freebasing. He's been torturing me 24 hours a day for 3 years. The whites made him believe that they would accept him if they told the blacks, we will accept you if you torture Marilyn and move her out of Kettering. This is a white community. They went and got black people, just like the slave plantation, to torture me to death. I just saw a black perp look in my window. Now the West Side of Dayton is driving through Kettering, a white neighborhood, to gang stalk me. I'm not saying that the other team is smart either. Now there's more black people looking at Kettering through my eyes. There's about 20 to 30 black people that can look through my eyes at any given time. They're seeing, like, you're racist, but you're going to allow them to visualize and see your family and your community through me. So, Daryl says, I can't believe I slept all night and the whites abandoned me, that they left me. Like they're sharing their brains with each other. And the whites have figured out cleverly how to drift away from the blacks because they're so insane. So then, because they don't want a conflict with all these black men, they say, look, if you deliver us the drugs, you can hang out. You can still look through our eyes because I belong to a different contractor, a different slave master. I don't belong to the slave master in Dayton. They're delusional. The person that has my remote neural monitoring contract for torture it's a combination of Dayton and Kettering, and they're white. They're white men. I have no idea who they are. So for some reason, the cocaine and the crack it's cheaper from this black drug dealer in Dayton and the West Side, and he takes Anton's cab service and for the last 3 years has been delivering cocaine to the whites. So they're trafficking drugs so that they can watch the white race. They're trying to mimic the white race. They try to talk like the white race. They even say things like, we want to see through the eyes of white women, that we want to rape white women and white men. And what they've done is they've sold black people to the whites. They're doing an exchange of slavery. Give us a couple white people and we'll give you some black. But they've given so many black people to them that any moment there's going to be a civil war. And so they direct all their rage towards me. Excuse me, that was horrible. Again, they choke me and my brain has extra fluid in it. It drains. My sinuses drain because they're torturing me all the time. Excuse me, that was gross. Alright, so, I hope that I'm expressing myself. I don't want to, my friend often says I'm long-winded. So we don't want to. We love Martin Luther King, okay, but we don't need to eat your food. You understand? I don't need to go into your restaurant and eat your food. Okay. So that's that. How did the civil rights movement end? The Civil Rights Act of 1964, which ended segregation in public places and banned employment discrimination on the basis of race, color, region, sex, or national origin, is considered one of the crowning legislative achievements of the civil rights movement. Now, I just want to chime in on this because the high-speed internet's great. I chime in on my own thoughts. Well, that's from the history.com website. We have to work, and unfortunately, the whites control the job market. So you're going to give us a job, and they understand that now, and they're pretty mellow about that now. Okay, now we all know how to act so we can get a job, and we need medical care, and we got that. We have a lot of things that I don't need to eat your food though. But what was I going to say? Because they're going to try to make me forget. Now, interesting, there's two sodomites that are ruining the minds of the hive, especially mine. And if you read the Bible, if you're a Christian, you can read these stories. Sodom and Gomorrah were two cities mentioned in the book of Genesis and throughout the Hebrew Bible. The New Testament and the Deuterocanonical books, as well as in the Quran and the Hadith. According to the Torah, the kingdoms of Sodom and Gomorrah were allied with the cities of Admon, Zabiam, and Bela. What is the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah? He explains that the sin of Sodom was that she and her daughters were arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. They did not help the poor and needy. They were haughty and did detestable things before me. Well, that's not all. Sodom and Gomorrah, notoriously a sinful city in the biblical book of Genesis, destroyed by sulfur and fire because of their wickedness. Sodom and Gomorrah, along with the cities of Adam and so forth, basically some of the worst sexual acts that we are now seeing in the European and the colonial civilization. Some of the most pedophilia that's out of control and pushing forward in our schools. That we should teach children to be something that they're not. Okay, so internalized racism from Gang Stalkers. It's so embarrassing. I can't wait to get rid of them. I can't wait to get rid of them. Self-hating men, where there's all these men that are impersonating women. They're impersonating me. It's quite a lot. It's quite a lot of men wishing they were me in this hive. Okay. We might need a queen to run the country. Alright, so just try to think about that if you have gang stalking like I do. These people are begging for the affection of white terrorists. Okay, I have reported them to the police several times. I've written letters to senators, congressmen. I've called the president. I've sent emails to the president. And I will continue to expose this. I pass out flyers on my YouTube channel. I've gone to protests about gang stalking. And I look forward to 2020 protests. Everyone try to save your money for all the TI protests that are going to happen this spring and summer. And everybody try to attend those. I'm going to try. And I might even be willing to contribute economically if I still have work to other TIs being able to go to these protests. I think it's really important. We're sharing brains with people that hate us and hate the world. So we have to get free from this. This is the most insane war ever. Thank you for listening. I'll try to be a lot shorter and quicker the next time. This is just amazing that I'm being tortured for drugs.